Hi everyone, I'm Nick Altmeyer with linkinglewiscounty.com, filling in today for Rebecca, and on today's episode of Hear All About It, we have Ed Murphy. So many people here in the village of Lowville might be familiar with Ed. Ed wears many hats. Today you are here on behalf of the North Country Hall of Fame.
Yep.
North Country Sports Hall
of Fame, yep.
Okay. So we have an induction ceremony coming up on October 4th. That's going to be taking place over here at the Lowville Elks Club.
Yep.
So reservations, you're accepting those now for people to come out.
Yep.
Some of these candidates are getting inducted.
Yep.
We should mention right now that reservations are due by September 30th, and the dinner is going to be on Saturday, October 8th.
Correct.
Okay. So you have 7 people are getting inducted this year, correct?
We do.
So why don't you tell us a little bit, before we get into the people, give us a little bit of an overview on what the North Country Sports Hall of Fame is.
Perfect. It's something that I guess I'd use the phrase spearheaded, was one of the original founders, let's say. And because it was kind of one of my ideas, there's a couple of us, that we came together and we thought this would be a neat way to do it. But I really did some background and figured out, what's the do's and don'ts of that or whatnot. So, of course, I got elected to be president the first year.
Yeah.
It's something I've had a real pleasure doing this. I mean, I've always been a sports person. Like I say, people are pretty familiar with it in the area through local stuff or whatever. But I grew up here on the ball fields, and it's just something that I've always been involved with. But to get in that, and I've kind of mixed really the political background with the sports background. That's really kind of what it is. I mean, politics is involved in a lot of different things, and just, it's almost like our own little form of a government to say, how do we decide who gets in and whatever. Right. So we've got a process. I mean, people will look at it and say, well, how come these decisions are made? It's basically a process. It's just like electing a president in the Electoral College. So yeah. It's been something that's evolved from year to year, and what I always say is, I mean, the first year was great. It was just it was the first year we did it. The first year, the first induction, I looked out at the crowd, and it just looked like a who's who of North Country people. And a lot of the people, and I said that too, that group of people have now, like Mike Albo was there for his father. So right. They're now becoming inductees themselves.
Right.
So it's the way I look at it is it's kind of my baby. So I treat it like people do their kids. They love all their kids.
Right.
And it's just every year there's a different class. So it's a pretty neat thing that we've got going on. And I'm just super excited to get back after a couple years off with COVID. Okay.
So I was just going to say, this is somewhat new.
Yep.
You guys have already inducted 3 classes.
Correct.
That was pre-COVID.
Yes.
So this is going to be your 4th induction ceremony.
It will.
And this is going to be your first one since, I think the last one you had was in 2019.
2019, correct.
Okay.
2020, not a lot of things are going on, obviously. 2021 wasn't necessarily, it was somewhat the COVID recovery mode. So the economy,
finding
venues. So and it was just too hard to plan. So this year we just said to ourselves, let's get moving on it. We're still in that kind of like organizationally, like a lot of people, and we're spread out. We're all over the North Country. So we encompass up into St. Lawrence County. We're Section 10, all of Section 10, which goes all the way up. Missy West got in from Malone a few years back, all the way down to Sandy Creek when we have Terry Haynes this year, a Sandy Creek graduate. So it's a huge mass. We're kind of, our central location is Watertown, but with this year's class, I just thought it was a real nice way to bring it to Lowville, move the venue, see how it works. And like I say, we've got a couple of headliners that are Lewis County people, so that's another reason why I'm here.
So in the past, this has been held somewhere at a venue in Watertown. So
yes.
This is your first year of
having
the ceremony in Lowville. As far as criteria, you touched on it a little bit. But so basically, we're talking Frontier League and then Section 10?
Yes, exactly. Frontier League, you had to be born in the area or have graduated from a high school. If not, like the perfect example on this list this year, Coach Tom Murphy from Belleville, he's not a native, but he came here and he coached. So you have to spend, if you're not born or graduated from, say, a high school for whatever reason, you have to spend, I think the number is like 7 or 8 years.
Okay.
So you have to have some sort, it's not, and the reason why we did that too, the background is, Potsdam basketball was unbelievable back in the 80s. And those kids were only there for 4 years. Well, they have their own Hall of Fame. That's really not what this is about.
Right.
But if a kid moves to Potsdam and then becomes a coach up there or comes down here and becomes a coach,
Right.
they're eligible. So we look at it. That's the other phrase too that I've always stuck with is we look at the entire body of work
Right.
that you have. So is today Ed Murphy or is Nick
Right.
Altmeyer worthy of it based on what they've done as of today?
And it's not just high school students. It's not, and it's not even high school sports.
Right.
I think you told me, there's been some lumberjacks in consideration and other sports that might not necessarily be high school related.
The Olympians. I took a look at the Watertown Times top 100 athletes, and so I mean, the Olympians especially, and even down here in Lewis County. I mean, some of them don't quite fit our general area, but you had like Jason Gleesman, the Boonville area, Aaron Hanlon.
Yep.
So that's the other thing is we're just, and this is actually, as you say that, it's not just high school. We've had professional athletes. This is actually, looking at the list, even though Mike Obel and Don Fazio played minor league baseball, they didn't make it to, say, the major leagues. This is the first time that we haven't had, we've had Brian Leonard, an NFL player, Craig Conroy, an NHL player. So this is the first, that's what I look at in this class, if I had to evaluate it, it's very North Country inclusive. Right. It's just very it's really a who's who of the North Country, not just somebody who had a cup of coffee and then went on and did other things. And there's nothing wrong with that either.
So you've alluded to a few of them. So let's get right to the list this year. We're going to have 7 inductees this year.
Yeah.
So I'm going to read through the 7 inductees, and then we'll just have you take a moment to say a short word on each of them. So we have Mike Obel and Wayne Ferguson are the 2 Lewis County residents that are being inducted this year out of the 7. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Mike and Wayne?
Sure. Mike Obel's a Lowville graduate, graduated in 1988, and he's kind of, I don't want to say Mr. North Country, but the other thing that he did is he went up to St. Lawrence University, and so he played 4 sports. He was an all-star in 4 different sports, which is hard to do. He played golf actually earlier in his career, and then he went and played baseball. Wound up being a minor league baseball player, so that's kind of his claim to fame as well. And he's still the all-time leading rusher in football, so he played 2 sports. He played football and baseball both up at St. Lawrence. So, when you talk about Lowville and my generation, you think of Mike Obel. Wayne Ferguson, his claim to fame is the Beaver River Wrestling program that he pretty much built. And ironically, Mike's father Neil coached at Lowville. They were big time. I mean, Lowville Beaver River rivalry in wrestling back in those basically 70s, 80s, into the 90s, and the early 2000s was just unbelievable. I mean, it's just not any disrespect to what's going on now, but it's nowhere near what it used to be. It was like Alabama, Auburn, or Duke, North Carolina. That's what that rivalry was. So Wayne was, and he actually broke Neil Obel's record for the most wins, which has been surpassed now in high school wrestling. But the other thing that Wayne's really, to brag about him a little bit, he won sectional titles in 3 different sports. He did it in wrestling, did it in football, and did it in baseball. Wow. So he can thank the class of '87 because I think all 3 sports won it that year.
Wow.
Baseball, and that's
a feat.
When Mike Obel took the Lowville team to the Dome, Beaver River won it that year as well. So it was pretty neat to have 2 Lewis County teams traveling down to the Dome for the sectional championships that year.
For sure. Okay, so that's the 2 Lewis County inductees this year. And we should mention that it's not really based on county or anything like that.
No,
so it's not like you say so many people from Lewis County are going to be inducted this year.
Yeah, we don't fill any quotas at all.
Happens to be where they come from. Yep. Okay, so we have 5 other inductees this year. So we have Don Fazio, Terry Haynes, Elizabeth Lucky, Tom Murphy, and Mike Powell. So probably a name on there that most people are going to be familiar with is Mike Powell for sure. So why don't you tell us a little bit about his claim to fame?
Well, he's the youngest of the, he's not the youngest, but of the 3 lacrosse players for the Powell family. Mike followed Casey and Ryan, and ironically, when we started this thing, we talked about the candidates or potential candidates, and we went in that order too. We took Casey in the first year, Ryan got inducted in 2019. This class too was actually decided on in 2020, but I'm always calling it the class of 2022 because it's the holdover one. So it's a very impressive class, and Mike really made a name for himself at Carthage. He really didn't follow up with a lot of lacrosse after that. He's now plays a lot of music, so he's kind of a claim for fame for that. Look at Don Fazio, was a minor league baseball player, grew up in Watertown, was pretty much that generation in Watertown, their version of Mike Abel, you know, as far as that goes. Terry Haynes was a 2,000-point scorer, the first on the girls' side, I believe, in New York State history, so she actually had the most points when she graduated high school in New York State history in basketball. Her records, of course, have been surpassed, but I think she's still in the top 5 or 6 in Section 3.
And where does she play?
She's from Sandy Creek.
Okay.
Yeah, and she unfortunately had a car accident and passed away back in 1990.
Oh. Wow.
So it didn't really affect her playing career or anything. She graduated from college and that sort of thing. Elizabeth Lucky, 2 or 3 sport athlete from OFA, went on to JCC, and then she went to Sacred Heart and became a well, it was a Division III program. She moved it to Division II while she was there in college softball.
Okay.
So she's one that made a lot of headlines here, but then went on and did some other things as well. And then you look at Tom Murphy, the basketball coach from Belleville, and not surprisingly, his team was our first team inductees back in 2017.
Right.
He was there for 83 of their 104 wins.
Yeah.
And he went on, in 1970, he left to go to Hamilton College, legendary coach. Still, I think, one of the greatest coaches Section 3's ever seen, you know, at any level, really. And he's still coaching on the bench with at Northeastern University with one of his former players at Hamilton.
Wow.
So it's a very, like I say, we've waited a long time to induct this group, and couldn't be prouder of the selections that we made. And we're excited about the induction coming up. Like you say, it's October 8th, Saturday, and we're bringing it here to Lowville Elks Lodge.
Okay, so basically it sounds like there's a dinner banquet to lead things off, and then there's a presentation ceremony.
Correct.
Basically, it sounds like the doors are going to open at 5, and then dinner starts at 6:30.
Yeah, there'll be a little reception, and people. That's a good, like I say, the first couple of years we're trying to figure out how to do this sort of thing. It allows people to, you know, if they can't make it 5 o'clock, they're there. But if they want to kind of hang out, it's just like I was saying. That first year was just unbelievable. It kind of looked like almost like a class reunion of North Country athletes. Right. So, and it'll be interesting to see too. I mean, you know, I joked the one year we had Lowville coach Lou Kibling in with Bee River coach Coach Giordano.
Bringing up some of the old rivalries.
Bee River Lowville or whatever, and it'll just, well, I think it'll end peacefully though.
Yeah. Getting them all back in the same room together.
Yeah.
Yep. So for anybody that's interested and wants to attend the banquet and kind of see the presentations, learn a little bit more about these special athletes, it's $40 per person.
It is.
Reservations are due by September 30th, which is Friday. And we're going to throw up on the screen how you go about and make the reservation.
Sure.
So you can either call Ed Murphy at area code 315-681-1281.
Yep.
We can email you at, let me read my writing here. It looks like ncsportshof@gmail.
The abbreviation basically for the group,
Okay, gmail.com. And then we also have your address, 5510 Jackson Street in Lowville, 13367, and people can just clip off the little portion of the form and send that directly to you.
Yeah, your mention was up on the events page or whatever, and we tried to put it out as much as possible.
But mail might not be the best option considering we're looking for these back by Friday, so probably the best thing is to give
call
you a call
to make the reservations, and it's like I say, it's just a couple things on that. Like I say,
we probably still let them drop the check in the mail.
We're hoping to we've got to get numbers for obviously for food and that sort of thing or whatever. So, but and at that point in time, we're going to just go with a number, and it's going to be first come first serve. So, we just have to be fair to the Elks Club to get them a number. And like I say, on the $40 thing, just a quick plug on that. That has never changed. So maybe we're charging too much the first year or whatever, but with inflation, it's tough to go out to eat. And so it is $40 per person, which includes, like I say, it's a buffet dinner that they have. So we've tried to keep that down as much, and thanks to some great sponsors and that sort of thing. So like I say, every year is different. I think this is going to be a fun night, though, especially like I say with those old Lewis County rivals, and it's neat because you talk to them, and I grew up watching some of these guys play or whatever, and you think of them as rivals, but and I know how it is too, is sometimes your bitterest rivals becomes that when you're done, it becomes your best friend. So
for sure.
There's a lot of mutual respect, I know, especially with those two families, with the Albo family and the Ferguson family.
So, like you said, very exciting to get this fourth class up and in and inducted into the North Country Sports Hall of Fame. Generally, now we know things have been off the last few years because of COVID and everything. When do you usually start the nomination process, and what's that look like for people? I mean, I'm sure we can have you back in when we get into the spring and are doing
We do nominations 365 days a year. I mean, it's open. We have a deadline each year for when we start our process.
Okay.
So, and we honestly haven't nailed that down to say here's the cutoff for it, which we would publicize. We have used something like, we usually start the decision process in the springtime, so it's usually a time like that. And we have to figure out who our voters are as well. We have a volunteer group of membership, which is about 30 or so people usually. You know, we've retained them pretty much every year. So yeah, we take nominations from the public, so that's where it all starts. So you don't have to be a dues-paying member of the group or anything. Anybody can, and there's no criteria as far as, you know, it could be somebody who doesn't live here anymore, but still has a tie to the North Country. So, but and there's a criteria to see who fits and who doesn't as far as the actual candidates go.
So people can reach out to you.
Yeah, we take that list or whatever, and we then basically we take that.
The committee votes on and chooses.
Yeah, the committee basically picks finalists pretty much, and then we send that back out to the 30 members. And the way we do it is very similar to the Baseball Hall of Fame.
I was just going to say.
We do, it's a 60, they do a 75%, but we never have that much of a consensus on people.
Right.
So we want to try to have a decent sized class, but not a crazy huge class.
Right.
So it's worked out well. We had 10 in our first year, 8 in our second.
It's probably easier your first couple of years because you have the pool of everybody to choose from. And as you induct more and more people, then it gets...
we may whittle it down to say, here's the top 6 or whatever, and if there's ties, we'll take both or whatever. But basically, our number is 60%. So it's more than 50. So you have to... So again, if somebody's upset because somebody's not in it, I'm upset because they're not in it as well. We have hundreds of candidates, so they're very worthy.
You'd like to see in there.
Yeah, they're very worthy candidates. So if you get 60% of that group to say yes to you, you know that you earned it.
All right.
You know.
So as we close out here, if you just want to give a quick mention to some of the people that make it possible for this to happen. I know you said you have a volunteer group, but I think you have some sponsors behind you that kind of help with. I think you give away some plaques and things like that.
We have awards, and that's probably a good way to finish it, because just the thank yous always starts with my board of people. Scott Connell's my vice president from Copenhagen. We've got, and I can't name all of them, but they know who they are, and they're just it's a great group to work. We have a bunch of fun at our meetings. We really do, because we get talking about this sort of stuff. So we have a great group of people as far as that goes. Sponsors, as you said, starting with Jeb's restaurant right here in town. They've been with us every year. And just to throw out too, I've been, I think, fairly kind to the sponsors because we've been dormant for a couple of years. So we've just basically gave them a couple of free years where we didn't do anything, so we weren't hitting them up. But just have to thank Jeb's and Mort Backus and Sons. I believe they're all three, and actually the other one was the Dexter 1855 house. All, since the beginning they've been with us. But a few new ones that we've had as well. Complete Care Chiropractic, Dr. Ray Higby. He's joined us as well. We've got RBI Bats, Double Play Community Center there, and I mentioned the Dexter House, and the other one this year is the committee to re-elect Dan King County Judge. So I'd like to thank all those people. It's not too late too. We do our program, so if anybody, any small business, or want to jump on board next year, we'd love to have you. I think, again, we have very affordable packages for sponsors, because we all know the sort of times that we have with, it's tough to make a living. So
send contact information, and we'll throw that up on the screen one more time, where the numbers to contact you, and the email, and the address if anybody wants to reach out with a sponsorship, reserve some tickets, anything like that. And one last time, dinner and induction ceremony is on Saturday, October 8th, right here at the Lowville Elks Lodge. And reservations are due by September 30th. So
Yeah.
we do appreciate you stopping by today, Ed. Was there anything else that you wanted to mention?
No, there's just, like I say, thank the Elks Club for all the work to put it on, and I know they're excited about it, and I couldn't be more pleased to bring it here to Lewis County and Lowville. So especially with the natives going in, I know they're pretty happy about it as well. So it's, like I said, it's always a fun time. We will, and you mentioned the plaques and stuff. We have not, and COVID didn't help it either, the shutdown that we had, but eventually we're going to be looking at an actual place for displaying memorabilia and stuff like that. So that's kind of in that phase 2 of our organization, which has kind of been on pause. I'd like to brag and say we would have had it by now or whatever, but again, we waited for this 4th class, so even though we're in about 5 or 6 years, so as that grows, there's only 30 people in this, so you really that have been inducted, so it's really the cream of the crop. And as I said before, if your favorite athletes out there that you want to nominate or whatever, I'm sure there's a ton, and we have a bunch of names that we go through every year, and I'm sure there's some that's embarrassing, the ones that we haven't even got nominations for yet. So do our, you can help us do our work by nominating them, and that's a public thing, so we're very open to a lot of different levels of helping us out here.
Perfect. Well, thanks again, Ed. We appreciate it, and we hope you have a very successful event this year. Sounds like a fun time.
Gonna be a fun time.
All right. Thanks.